Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for another installment of Pod Gaming's Blake or No! Alright folks, here are the rules. Each episode, your hosts Marshall and Shawn will discuss a certain aspect of video gaming. Each host will present their case for whether or not the trope is a good idea. Take it away, Marshall and Shawn!
Welcome back to the next episode of Philosophy of Gaming. Today we're talking about fast travel or no. So we're going to give you a little explanation of what that is, and then we're going to have a heated debate about it, hopefully.
I don't think it's going to be too heated.
I don't think so.
But so here's the thing. Marshall and I have talked about this a little bit off camera, and as we've discovered on the topic of fast travel, there's actually a lot to unpack there.
There is, yeah.
Yeah. So what I figure that we can do is just take a brief minute and kind of talk about the principle of fast travel in games and then start breaking it down into different examples from there. I think it's important to kind of define what we mean by fast travel. So I would say fast travel is an in-game function that allows the player to select a destination for a location, and then the game takes over and then transport you there in one way or another, as I'm sure we'll talk about in the different games.
Without you waiting for it.
Or as I'm sure we'll discuss, there are some examples where you do.
Right.
So just brief example, Skyrim, open up the menu, click on something, loading screen, you go there. Game like World of Warcraft, I'm sure you'll get into depth on that a little bit more. Yeah. You can go to a place where you basically pay, you ride like a griffin across the map. Now, there's no loading screen and it's not instant, so you're sitting there waiting to be flown around, but you aren't in control. The game does it for you, right?
Yeah. So, in principle, fast travel is a good thing. It helps you get around the map. It helps you play and experience more of the game. It saves you a lot of time. It lets you explore more places. And like I said, in general, it seems like a great idea to have in a game.
Right. And I think that there's a trade-off though, right? Because so for every pro, there's usually a con. So I think that what fast travel does is that it gives you convenience, it expedites time,
right.
But what you're trading for that is a lack of immersion in the experience of the game. Right.
Yeah, and that's a big thing where when Shawn and I talked about it, we kind of agreed. You know, having the immersion when you're playing the game straight through without going through a bunch of loading screens is important. You know, it really makes you feel like you're in the game that you're playing. Mm-hmm. And when you do the fast traveling thing, yes, you can accomplish more faster, but at the same time, you lose that sense of importance that you belong in this game. And that's kind of the reason that people play games in the first place, is to escape. So
one quick thing that I will say, though, is that there are games out there that might have a fast travel mechanic, but you're not incentivized as much to use it because it is fun to travel around the map. One example I would give is Nier Automata. In Nier Automata, if you haven't played it, you basically run around a giant open world map. And because of the way that the movement mechanics of the game are, it's actually really fun and satisfying to just simply traverse the map. And there's always enemies that get stronger. Like they scale with your level. So that way, even if you go back to an old area that you've been to before, even if you're just passing through, there's still new challenges, more or less. There's still rewards to be gained. And so you're not just wasting the time that it took you to travel there, even though there is a fast travel mechanic in the game.
And I think that that's kind of big, because when you look at it from that perspective of there's something else to be gained, you won't use the fast travel mechanic. Now, there's something to say for having more challenging enemies. That's great. But if you don't get anything from fighting them, then there's almost no point in doing it. So as long as there is a real benefit to running and not fast traveling, people will do it. Now, if there is not, then people will not do it, and they will use the fast travel mechanic. And then, although it's nice in principle, it almost feels like you're cheating to me.
Yeah, like you're in like a Game Shark mode of the game.
Right, like you don't need to go through and fight everything that you should have to run through because you've been here before. You can just fast travel back, and that, you know, comes full circle when you look at a game like Skyrim. You know, if you're here on the triangle and you need to go here, well, you'll run there. But then you need to go over here, and it's faster to fast travel back to here and run up there, and you'll never experience anything on the top line that you may have run through to get there, because the time it's going to take is going to be much less by just fast traveling and then running from there.
Oh no, I've gone cross-eyed.
Granted, you're still doing the running thing and running through everything and traversing the land, but there's something that is eroded in the experience when you do something like that because you may miss something. And in Skyrim, there's so much stuff to do on the side that you may just completely miss it altogether.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I think that this it's not just Skyrim, but like Fallout as well. So
Yes,
basically,
yes.
Bethesda games, I love them. I'm a huge fan of Skyrim and Fallout. However, I think that they are the example of the worst fast travel system. One, because you don't even have to like go to a location to fast travel. You can literally just open up your menu, click on something, and then boom, loading screen, you travel there.
Yes.
That dramatically diminishes the experience of immersion.
Yep.
But also, the other thing too is that you are incentivized to do that because it's kind of like what you're saying. There is no reward for basically backtracking through paths, even though you might come across a location that you haven't seen before and there might be something else to do. It's just not as rewarding because you know what to expect. And unlike Nier Automata, you kill enemies and then you get the loot resources from them. Granted, there's loot in Skyrim, but it's basically just the same kind of whatever gear is on the thing that you would fight and kill.
Right.
It's just not worth to just travel on foot, which sucks because Skyrim and Fallout are such great games with a lot to do. You just have to zip around to...
It's almost like they're too expansive in a way. Like they shouldn't be as expansive. And maybe that's one solution to it. But something you said there really made me think about it. You know, you said that you can fast travel from anywhere in the world. You can just open up the map and travel to a point you've been to before. There are games that do this where you cannot do it from just anywhere in the world. You have to
most games are like that. Skyrim and I feel like Bethesda games are kind of like an outlier.
They're
in
an
that.
anomaly.
Yeah.
And I think that in a game like that, for example, Final Fantasy 12, or like your good example, Final Fantasy 10,
Right.
both Square Enix games, both Final Fantasy games, I feel like the fact that you have to be in a specific location to do their fast travel mechanic makes it less fast travel and more like medium travel. Or, you know, it's not as convenient to the player.
And the point that this was off camera when we were talking about Final Fantasy X, but another example is like for me, Dark Souls 3 and Final Fantasy X are kind of similar because it's not, they're not open world games, but there's rather zones throughout the game that you travel throughout your playthrough. And then there's points in which you can kind of travel back to just those zones. That makes sense, even though it's just a loading screen gets you there sort of a thing. Yeah, there's kind of a lack of immersion, but at the end of the day, the point of those games is to just experience what those zones have to offer, and then you can jump around between them.
Right. So now here's where I go a little back and forth. As Shawn knows, he likes to call me a person who doesn't make decisions in these videos.
Nailed it!
I don't know.
He has a track record, and he's blanker nose.
Apparently. So in World of Warcraft, for example, of course I'm going to talk about World of Warcraft, my favorite game of all time. You do have some kind of fast travel when you use a portal to go to a different location, but you don't have that accessible to you unless you're in a major city. And so for the most part, you don't really have that super accessible to you. But the way that they give you travel is that you get on the back of a griffin, or if you're a horde, you
Whatever
get on
the
back of
flying
whatever
creature is, right? Yeah.
And you fly, and you actually have to wait and watch your character fly all the way across all the zones. You can do a travel from the top of one continent to the bottom, and it might take you 12 minutes. Like, truthfully, you will watch your character go all the way. Now, in a way, this is immersive because it really shows you the scale of the game.
You can actually see everything you're missing out on as you fly over it because it's happening in real
Right.
time around you.
Right.
Yeah.
And then in another way, because it's a MMO, it's a massive multiplayer online game, it gives you time to talk to people, to mess with things in your inventory, like whatever you want to do there.
So you're saying it works for a game like WoW.
It works for a
that
game
way.
like WoW in that way. But, you know, and it means you could get up and go grab a drink or something like that, or go make some food because you have a few minutes. But overall, if you put that in a single player game, it would be far less of just a small annoyance.
Oh my gosh, it would be just...
It would just be, you'd just be like, why
yeah.
am I waiting? I'm by myself. What am I waiting 12 minutes for? So it's great in this game and likely in other games that are similar to it in other MMORPGs. But in a game that's a single-player game like Fallout, Skyrim, Final Fantasy X,
Yeah.
12, any of these games, it just would seem like a drag because you'd hit that and then you'd have to wait. And then you'd have nothing you could do. There's nobody to talk to. It's not an online game. There's nothing for you to do in that meantime. You just have to wait the whole time. So
Right.
I can understand why people like it. I can understand why it is put into games. And to compare the two, I can understand on both sides. I can see why it's good and why it's bad.
Yeah, actually, this reminds me of another criticism I have of fast traveling. And I kind of developed this sense by playing World of Warcraft, believe it or not. So, but it's a compliment to World of Warcraft. When you're fast traveling, it just makes it easier for you to zip around the map and take care of whatever quest or do whatever it is that you're trying to do. But the other thing it robs you from, other than immersion, is the joy of trying to prioritize the things that you need to do. So for example, in World of Warcraft, you might have like say 10 quests that are scattered throughout a large area. So you would have to tactically plan out, I'm going to go from here to here to here to here to here, and basically work your loop to try to be efficient in the tasks that you're creating. Rather than a game like Skyrim, you have quests that are scattered all around the map. You can literally just travel to each one as if it's like a separate level of a game, rather than taking the joy of how do I quickly travel throughout the map and accomplish the goals that I'm trying to do.
Now, and that brings me to another point. Let's take it to a more recent game, a more modern game, God of War 2018. Of course, I'm going to talk about that. That game has a fast travel mechanic. It's one of the ones where you have to be in a specific location to use it.
Like most games.
Which is good. It is the only time in the game, other than dying, that you will experience a loading screen, although air quotes around that. If you've played it, you know there's really not a loading screen. It's just a loading area that you can run around in. When I look at that game and how I've played it, to me, I would not have enjoyed and done as much as I did in that game had it not had that mechanic, because of the time it saved. And that's where there's this big toss-up. It's like, it's not that big. It's not as big as Skyrim, but is it good to have the fast travel, or is it not? I mean,
so I don't know much about God of War. So what is the fast travel? Is that fast travel mechanic different than in most other games, or?
No. I'd say it's similar to any game that you can fast travel in, like Final Fantasy 10 or 12. I just wanted to bring a more modern approach.
Yeah.
Look at a more modern game, because we're talking about games. Every single game we've talked about so far has been at least 10 years old. And so I thought it'd be cool to say, look at this game that's relatively new. It's very modern. The new one is coming out this year, and it's probably going to have the exact same mechanic. And it makes it hard for me to say no, that I don't like fast travel, because if it weren't for fast travel in that game, I wouldn't have done as much.
Yeah.
And my main argument for why I don't like fast travel is make the game smaller. But that doesn't work, because this game's not that big. I mean, it's a good size, but it's not too big.
I think there's another modern example of a game like that too. Dying Light is similar like that, where you basically have to go around and unlock safe zones, and then you can fast travel between the safe zones. But it's not like a Bethesda game where you can just open up the menu and travel there. Like, you have to go to one of those zones, and then you basically go to sleep there, and then you can wake up at another one. One of the things I like about that, which, I mean, it's still not my favorite in terms of how games implement fast travel into it, but time elapses when you fast travel, and I think
Which is good.
If you're going to do anything in a game like that, at least make a time lapse mechanic.
Yeah,
because it just makes sense.
Make something occur when the fast travel happens.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard for me to decide, but I think at the end of the day, I'm a yes.
Yeah,
I'm a yes on fast travel.
Yeah, I'll kind of explain my verdict before I give it.
Oh, this guy's gonna flip flop now, huh?
No, I'm not gonna flip flop. It's very simple, but I'm just gonna explain why. I think that fast travel has pros and cons to it, but I think it is a necessary evil. So therefore, I am also a yes on it. I think there are some games that do it very, very well, to the point where it's either enjoyable or not. How would I say it? It doesn't diminish my experience from playing the game. However, there are some games that their fast travel system really is a turnoff, like the Bethesda games, for example, in my opinion. Even though I love those games, the fast travel thing, I am just not a fan of.
So like how you said, it's a necessary evil. It's kind of like microtransactions.
We're not going to get back into that.
If you didn't see that video,
that was the last blank or no one that we did. But when it comes to fast travel, we just kind of glossed over quite a few games for I think a short amount of time, but it's like I said, there's so much to unpack on this topic because there's so many examples of it. So in the comment section, whatever game it is that you like that has a fast travel thing, tell us about what your thoughts are. What games have a good fast travel mechanic and why? And then on the other side of that coin, what games do you know of that have terrible fast travel mechanics, and then explain why as well. We want to hear your opinions on this because, like we said, there's a lot.
Or a larger game that doesn't have a fast travel mechanic, and like how does it impede you, and in what way do you appreciate it?
Yeah, that's another thing too. Kind of like Nier Automata. Like they can eliminate fast travel from that, and it would
change your
still
experience.
be a good game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool. So we hope you guys enjoyed this next installment on the Blank or No series. And like you said, interact in the comments, and
we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks, guys.